problem. Mathematical equations in my mind, unpredictable persuasions that he finds, unbreakable invasions, dangerous thoughts leave awful abrasions, forceful irrational actions, hate them, absorbing my time. He's an alien core extraction of the good thoughts that I long for, anchor slipping from my mind, my soul. He's gripping, I'm losing entire control. Faster than a Concorde, things I wanna conquer take me far longer. He swings at me harder than Happy Gilmore back in some golf balls. He is the monster thrashing my conscience. I am engulfed in his tiresome problems. Call for as he drives me bonkers. I'm dizzy heads, physiological meanings hang around with me. Psychological demons.
What's going on, everybody? This is Andy Morales, and welcome to the Jandom Sessions Live podcast, episode number 6. In case you're wondering, the song you just heard was called Lonely, and it is by Duke Al, who happens to be my guest today. How are you, brother?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to getting into some cool conversation.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny because I was joining Robert Kazi's live and you were the first person he had. And because I know he had told me, yeah, I'm going to do this episode and I'm going to do the whole open mic and have a guest. So when I happened to tune in when you were live with him, and I was just so fascinated. I said, I have to follow this guy. I have to get to know this brother more. And I'm glad I did, you know. And even Robert was like, hey, bro, you should definitely have this guy on your podcast, man. Definitely. I'm like, yeah, I'll reach out to him, see if he's interested. And here we are, you know. So this is so organic. I think one thing oh, my bad. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said, no, I love that, man. And I really appreciate you, your compliments. And watching the show, I think Robert is just such an awesome guy. And I was very privileged to be the first guest on his show. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yes, I love Robert too. It's funny because I met him through another brother who goes by the name of Hyro, and he's the one that introduced me to Robert when they were doing pieces together. So again, that was very exciting to know that brother and everybody else on Instagram actually. So it's definitely exciting. So one thing I guess we could start here is the new EP album that just dropped. Congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you, man. It's been such an awesome journey. Yeah, it dropped on March the 13th, which is my birthday.
Amen.
And it's called 13th of the 3rd, 1994, which of course is my date of birth. And the reason I called it that is because when I look back to my projects, I want to remember that to be, you know, my first project. And I thought it was a really cool title just to sort of introduce me as well as an artist. And the first track, then 13, gets straight into the nitty gritty of who I am and what I'm about. So, yeah, I'm really just proud of just achieving creating my first EP, and I just hope people can listen to it and hopefully get something from it, man. That's the reason why I do this.
Amen, amen. And I definitely agree with that. You know, not just gain inspiration, but to also give inspiration to those who are uninspired, if that makes sense. And I wanted to talk to you about the song "Lonely" because if I'm not mistaken, that's their single, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's the single. Yeah.
So talk to me about that song.
So "Lonely" was a song which I first got the instrumental back in 2020 February. So really, I'll cut this story quite short, this part of the story, but I was looking for a producer basically, and I uploaded a cover of a Drake song, Life is Good, and then a producer from Finland, in the name of his producer's name is called Baben. He actually liked the song, and at the time, you know, I was seeing people who liked my music, seeing what was going on, and I clicked on his profile, seeing he was a producer, and then liked his beats. I thought, oh, that's cool, you know. And I feel like the universe was answering me, you know, or, you know, God was answering my prayer or answering what was going on in my head, thinking I need a producer to really work with, but not just to work with, but somebody who gets me and we like gel with naturally, and it's authentic. So I messaged him just straight away saying, hey man, would you like to collaborate? I think your music's awesome, type thing. And he said, yeah, let's go for it. But it wasn't until April when we were put in lockdown where we actually started really talking properly. And then "Lonely" was the first song of the EP we did. We started video calling. A very good friend of mine now. And then I said to him, would you like to do an EP? And he was well up for it. So it's awesome. So that's organic in itself. And then with "Lonely" being our first song, I've always wanted to do a song which is basically sort of talks about my struggles with alcohol, to use it as a negative coping mechanism to battle my own OCD. Now, OCD is a very misunderstood mental health illness, and I also wanted to break some of the stigma with the song as well. So it's a very important song for me to do. And yeah, I dropped the music video not long ago as well, so that's got a bit more of a visual about how basically when I was a bit younger, I was having all these intrusive thoughts. Everything was so difficult to deal with, and I wasn't educated enough on my own mental health illness, because education is power, as you know that. So yeah, I turned to alcohol to try and fight that, and that's what the song's about, really. I'm just trying to be raw and real, and with everything that I do, including this song. My little slogan is I create to relate and educate. So relate to people who are going through certain things in life, in this case mental health illness, and more specifically OCD, so they don't feel alone, and so they can maybe reach out themselves, and as you said, try and inspire others to reach out and get help, and recognize those negative coping mechanisms in their life, because we all have them, unfortunately, but we just need to try and trade them for those positive coping mechanisms, and then educate people who just don't understand, man. You know, as I said, OCD is a very misunderstood mental health illness, and you know, more awareness needs to be made of it worldwide, but not just OCD. Like, many mental health illnesses are so misunderstood, and as I said, knowledge is just power, and if we can all just take the time just to educate ourselves even a little bit about different mental health illnesses, even physical illnesses, we can have so much more understanding in the world together.
No, I definitely agree with that. And everything you said was so spot on, because, you know, when I first started doing the community, because before I had the podcast, there was actually a community page that had the podcast in it. So I would just upload the lives onto the podcast, because before you couldn't save the lives. And then once they started doing, okay, you can save the lives, there was no point for it. So I had to redirect the podcast. So to lead into what you're saying, I definitely agree with you, because when I decided to do the second season, but now this one's just on my own, and because I don't have the community page anymore, it's just all my podcast. So I feel, you know what, I think I know what direction I'm going to take this in. So when I decided, okay, I'm going to do this, and everything you just said was exactly the reason why I wanted to do the season 2. Just, you know, move on and just continue with the podcast, because what it all comes down to is there's so many stories that need to be told, and a lot of their stories that have not been told because they haven't given the platform, or they haven't given the opportunity to tell the story. And everything you just said, you know, we are not alone, and there's people who don't know that, and this is a good way to use that, whether it's my podcast or whether it's your music, or through poetry. And one thing I realized about this poetry community is that a lot of us are so connected in such a profound way that it's like, wow, you know, like you live in the UK, I live in Jersey, but I'm originally from Bushwick of Brooklyn, New York. You know, I'm like, whoa, who would ever thought I could connect with someone like yourself, you know? And it's just so powerful how, so it is possible to use social media for good. Not all social media is bad, you know, and this is very profound.
Yeah.
And I definitely believe that. And as far as mental health, yeah, mental health is really bad right now. And one thing I will say is that it is very misunderstood. As a matter of fact, I was diagnosed with schizotypal personality disorder when I was growing up, which gets confused a lot with schizophrenia. That gets confused a lot, you know, and everything you just said, it makes so much sense, because yeah, you do feel alone, you do feel vulnerable, because a lot of things were not explained to me. And you know, when you live in a household with Puerto Rican people, because I'm Puerto Rican, so I have Puerto Rican parents, 1950, so they're very old fashioned, and I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things. I wasn't allowed to express my emotions. So I had to keep everything bottled up, because, you know, like having a conversation with someone like my parents, it was just impossible. So it was what it was. Yeah. And we weren't allowed to talk about those things. And with that being said, poetry and like I told Robert, I don't consider myself poet. I'm more like a guy who writes. That's the way I see myself. And me writing is what got me by my childhood to teenagehood to adulthood. It really got me by. Yeah. And what you said about alcohol, yeah, definitely, because I actually struggled with that a lot for a long time. I mean, I've been clean for like almost 7 years now, but I used to do
Oh, so
yeah, I used to do drugs. I used to do alcohol. I did Molly. I used to do weed. I used to do all these things because, like you said, the coping mechanism is just what I knew. At first I did it because it was like, all right, everybody else was doing it, but I didn't understand that me doing that was the seed to further my depression rather than to get better, if that makes sense.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I can relate to that. Growing up in the UK, we have we're such a heavily sort of binge cultured society. uh, we start drinking, 14, maybe some people younger than that, and we drink. A lot of us drink just to get drunk, and then I started doing that, from a young age, from around 14, and then I didn't realize until I was a few years older that the reason, all my friends used to say I was absolutely crazy when I was drunk, and I would be the one to always excessively drink, just drink to the point until I couldn't drink no more. Whether that resulted with me just spewing my guts out, passing out, getting into trouble or what, I just kept drinking. And it wasn't until the realization when I was a little bit older, I was like, oh wow, I know exactly why I did that now. And the reason why I became so wild and my personality almost changed was because I was just I was fighting myself pretty much. I was fighting my OCD, and not struggle. That's the wrong word. I never get angry, man. I'm not an angry person. But when I drink, I get angry at myself, not at others, but at myself. And then it almost gave me like that outlet to say, no, I'm not going to listen to you today. I'm going to do this instead. But then that persona would then come across onto other people in a, not a very nice way. So unfortunately, drink has got me into a few problems in my life. Um, I'm the one to blame, yes, but at the end of the day, I've learned from it. And as I said, knowledge is power. When I realized it was my OCD and realized what I was doing, I was able to change it. And I love what you say about writing as well. Writing for me was definitely, I would say writing is probably saved my life. I mean, before the alcohol, I used to cope straight away with the pen and the paper, So that was my initial way of. That's how it got me into poetry, got me into writing, because I was just writing poetry and raps about all these crazy thoughts that I was having, and I didn't want to tell anybody because I thought everybody would think I was crazy. So that was my escapism, just getting everything down onto the paper, but in some sort of creative way. And it's been with me ever since. Even though as I said, I've tripped over a few times, on the alcohol and things like that. But yes, it's still with me today, and now I'm trying to be as impactful as possible, man.
No,
As you are with your podcast.
no,
Your
amen.
podcast is important. So what you're doing is very important work. So
No,
we
thank you,
appreciate that.
thank you. No, thank you. And it's so true. Like writing is so therapeutic, but I know what you mean too, because it's like, it's crazy. Like it's because even though you said very interesting thing, you said, oh, that you didn't realize how crazy you are. I don't think you were crazy. I just believe that, when you look back on all your writing, that's where you were. Like one thing that somebody told me, Brian Edwards, who's someone I definitely, he's one of the biggest inspirations in my life as well in this poetry community, was he said that, when you write poems and then you look back on them later, even though that's not where you are now, but that's where you were at that time. But to look, because you could change it if you want, but why? Like, why would I want to change something like that? No, like that's who I was at that time I wrote this piece. That's not who I am today, but I can look back and be like, wow, I could appreciate that.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah, I like that. That's a good thing to do. Look back on your poems and never change them, man. They represent you. They represent you of a different stage of your life, emotionally and physically, or whatever's going on. So it's almost like a rhyme diary, we should say.
Yes. Yeah. So, with that said, would you like to share a piece with us?
Yeah, I'd love to share a piece with you. I'm actually going to show you the same piece that I did on Robert's live the other day because it's a relatively new piece.
Okay.
And it's actually a collaborative piece, but it can also be a separate poem. So when it's a collaborative piece, an awesome poet called Jax, she does her piece first, then we both synchronize this other piece, which is a response to it, and then I do my last piece, and I do my piece, which is what I'm going to do with you now. And the whole poem is basically about, it's called A Letter to Myself About Letters, but it's about how our different mental health illnesses challenge us when we try and learn poems. So basically, OCD throws like intrusive thoughts like at every letter you can imagine, and attaches them to every letter. When I'm trying to learn my poems, it just likes to try and steal my concentration, and it becomes very stressful for me to learn poetry, to actually learn my poems. So I wanted to sort of explore that, and I don't think it's really been explored before, which is why we've created this. So here it is, man.
All right.
A letter to myself about letters. Letters let us communicate when the pen is on the page where your hate cannot be betrayed. They are my escape. Let trust illuminate between the gaping hole in which I create to keep you in the shade. Let us break like an iceberg of lettuce, where our layers are laid for all on display, so they know you and how you manipulate me. Let a race for letters zoom at a pace where cadence dances, an informal sentence structure, a free flow, unique changes, no life sentence, just me, my life behind these bars, these stanzas. Whoever wins may point to a place of how the brain interprets the letters I choose to be a part of my portrait. All I want to do is write meaningful words which relate and educate my fellow humans with a seamless flow. Letters let us loathe, lonely, licking lips, getting ready to spit. But this time, who won the race? Will I trippity trip or slippity slip on the tippity tip of my tongue? Where I'd run into a sudden fatigue, where the letters don't flow so quick. They slow stick to my enzymes as if they become chopped up, then you end rhymes quick. My mouth, a letterbox full of your hate mail. I digest lines as they pass through my intestines into the toilet as my shit. A reversed verse because I lost the race and that's it. Even if I rehearsed, I choke. Yeah, it's the nerves, but it's also this bloke, this person, this version of me within me. Yes, I'm talking about you, OCD. With each letter, you attach a character that's dark and gloomy, which detaches my concentration. I must perform compulsions to feel okay as they start to consume me. Anxiety through the roof. I complete my compulsions, yet fear soon resumes, see? They are mentally traumatizing, R-rated. Nothing's ever A-OK because you, OCD, have no R-E-S-P-E-C-T for me, frankly. Let me put it frank. Links to my mental health lead back to you, the founding father of my mental suffering. A Frankenstein horror show you show me when I am trying to learn my words, my poetry. So I'm going to keep this PG-13 to save the triggers. After all, you are a Looney Tune. Looming around all smug, you think it's funny as you chew in my ear like an evil Bugs Bunny. I feel are daft. Duke, you're like Daffy Duck, who can't pronounce these letters or they just get stuck. A stutter mutter like Porky Pig. I wish I could recite these words as easy as spreading butter or apple sauce on a porky pig. I'm dorky when I write my rhymes. I want them to morphine this pain with wordplay and syllables, deeper meaning, skills lyrical to fight against these rituals. The cynical, miserable individual, uncontrollable like the Tasmanian devil. I'm ill, of course. Now I understand how that little bird Tweety felt being chased around so much. Yet at least she was clever enough to deflect all of the rough potential attacks, and she was tough. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I've had enough. All I want to do is write meaningful words which relate and educate my fellow humans with a seamless flow. These characters form my poems. With each letter, I'll get better, I'll forget your OCD. All of those intrusive thoughts you hopelessly feed, throw at me. I am the competitor competing for my mind. You're my vendetta, a part of me forever trying to stop me from living life. Yet you will never stop my rhymes. That's me.
Wow.
That's
wow. Wow.
I just had a sip of my tea.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Wow. Oh my God. Wow. So much relatability on this piece. Oh my God. And one thing I love about this piece, because I started writing some notes down while you're speaking, because I'm the kind of guy, like, I like to read something or listen to something and dissect it a little bit. One thing I love about this piece is the fact that you didn't allow the things to define you, rather you defined it. The part where he says, the part basically when you talking about who won the race, I lost the race, you keep going. But like, I love that. And I love how you took OCD and you called it by name. You called it out. Kind of like when someone's bothering you, I'm going to call you out on it type thing. And you knew when enough was enough. I'm going to take charge of my life, and I'm not going to let you control me, rather I control you, kind of thing. And it's funny because I've been walking with the Lord, I'm going to say, since 2013. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned from that, and it is so defined in this piece too, is that one, when enough is enough, you take charge, right? And another thing I learned about my walk with the Lord is that when something's overcoming you, you call that thing by name. And like they say, step on it, kind of thing. Like, because that thing, it goes how do I explain it? Like, the area of attack is always beneath your feet because you're conquering that thing. Yeah, I have this, but it's not who I am. It's part of who I am, but I'm going to use that to be a positiveness so I can relate to other people. That's what I got from this piece. And I love how this piece spoke to me that way, because at the end of the day, the part with the race really got to me, because I thought about Paul from the Bible, and he talks a lot about, the race. It's not about, like, how did he say? It's not about winning the race. It's actually getting through the race, because going through the race is the process. It's the stuff you go through. And yeah, there's roadblocks there, but I'm not gonna let that roadblock stop me from the destination I need to get there. To be there. So I'm gonna keep pressing on, no matter how difficult this race gets. Because at the end of the day, once I finish the race, I can look back and be like, yes, I got through this race. I got through this lap. I got through all of this. And at the end of the day, it's like, I did not let these things overcome me. So if I went through all this, so whatever else is ahead of me, I'm going to be okay, because I'm still alive and I'm still breathing. And I've conquered this. I've got through this to a point where, no, I can go through anything else, because I know now how strong I am, because the process you go through is to make you stronger. And people think that struggle makes you weaker. Actually, it helps you become stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's what I got from this piece, when the piece you just read. And it's called Letters.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, man. That was an awesome interpretation of what I said. And it's fantastic that you've found the relationship with God as well. So I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
Called A Letter to Myself About Letters. Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God. Because everything you said is just so spot on. And that's exactly what it is. And I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that piece. And I love the fact that you could just take everything you've been through and turn it into positive. Because I think that's very important, taking the negatives into positives and to make it your own, because unfortunately there's a lot of people, and I think we've all done this, where when we don't have guidance and we don't really know what to do, it's like, you're vulnerable. And it's crazy, because when I was growing up, no one really sat down with me and explained things to me. So when I was going through some things, and I was going through certain things I didn't understand, and the way I would react to it was like, oh my God, what is that? And it sucks, because then the people who do, who were explained things to, looked at you like, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he acting like that? Like, to them it's normal. To me, it wasn't normal. And I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, I was going through puberty. Nobody really explained to me what that was. The things I was going through and all this other stuff. And people would look at me like I'm crazy. Yo, why are you reacting like that? Oh, what's wrong with you, kind of thing. And it's like, nobody really explained that to me. And it was very difficult in my teenage years when I was going through these things,
Yeah, that must have been tough, man.
Yeah, and it's like, damn, but like, again, it's like, it was over time that, and that's just one example of what I went through. But there was other stuff I went through too, like when I had my first girlfriend, because I didn't have my first girlfriend until I was like 20, so I didn't understand the difference between your friends and having a girlfriend, a significant other. I never really understood that. And it took two relationships for me to really understand after we broke up and stuff like that. And it's interesting, because when you don't have guidance and you don't have anyone to sit down with you and really explain things to you, it's hard. It really is hard. And we don't know how to deal with those situations. And it's like, it's later on in life that, oh, okay, I get it now. But at the same time,
Yeah.
I can be like, oh, see, but if you explained this to me, then maybe I wouldn't have went through that. But if you would have never went through that, then you wouldn't really understand life on a bigger scale of things.
Yeah, I understand. I feel like life gives every individual challenges. Don't get me wrong, some challenges may be tougher than others. I mean, 100%. But in life, I feel we all have our challenges. Let me just use myself as an example. I feel my first challenge in life is... Sorry, my cat just jumped on my back and I jumped.
No, it's okay.
She scrammed me. She got some sharp claws, man. Well, yeah. So my first challenge in life, 100%, has been my OCD. Just growing up, understanding it, living with it, so isolated for so long, not telling anybody about it, almost being afraid of what people think of me, just in fear of like just family members dying because I didn't complete a compulsion. I had that weight on my shoulders. It's difficult to explain, but if you have an intrusive thought that a family member will die if you don't, for example, run up and down the stairs 20 times, which is one random compulsion that I do, the anxiety that comes with that is ridiculous. And then if you don't do it correctly 20 times, or you forget the number, or you get interrupted, you do it again another 20 times, then it becomes super time consuming and stressful. And the uncertainty of like, did I run up those stairs like a correct way? Did I purposely miss step number 1 and went on step 2? And it gets very complex. Again, that is just one of the many compulsions that personally that I've done. A lot of mine are in my head. I pray a lot as part of rituals and compulsions, but that's something called puro OCD, where you can't, where they call it invisible compulsions, so they're all in my head. But anyway, I feel like what I'm trying to say is I then was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 23, which was quite difficult with the change of lifestyle, injecting every day for maybe about 5 times a day, basically injecting insulin with every meal, and basically just to keep me alive. So that's my next challenge. But what I've realized from these challenges, and as I've been growing up, and as I've been writing about it and writing about my experiences, that life throws you challenges purposely, because it all depends on how that individual deals with the challenge. And when we can find balance within our life, our challenge is to find balance. So balance, being able to understand and figure out a way of dealing with our mental health illness. For example, therapy. For example, positive coping mechanisms, exercise, eating healthy, talking to people, being creative. And then with my type 1 diabetes, just keeping on top of things with my insulin, making sure, again, I'm eating healthy and exercising. I feel like balance is the key. It's the key to all of our challenges. No matter how hard the challenge is, you've got to deal with it in a certain way, and you can go one way or the other. You can follow the road of not being able to deal with it, and then that just leads to more challenges in your life. Or you can face your problems head on, and as hard as it is, especially mental health illness, as hard as it is to combat. Once we do combat it and face it, that is, on the other side is life really is living and finding that balance to succeed, to achieve, to just be unstoppable. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It does. And one thing I love what you said was the stairs analogy that you bring in. Like, let's say you're going up 20 steps, but I like how you said, did I miss this step? Did I skip a step? And I took that as a process. Like, okay, when you go to each step one by one, you're going through all the steps. But one thing I've learned in my life, if I could use that analogy as well, is the fact that yeah, I can go through the steps, but am I learning my life as I go each step at a time? Because we can go through things step by step, but if we rush the process of going through each step, are we really learning anything from that? And I think that's very profound that you said what you said because it's so true to life, and as far as the diabetes thing, my mother, has she's pre-diabetic because and I'm like really up there, so I'm trying my best to maintain what I eat because I used to eat like ridiculous, and gluttony is something definitely I struggle with, which I don't really talk about a lot, but that is something I struggle with, gluttony and trying to change the habits of eating is it's not an easy thing. It really isn't. But
Yeah.
like when I hear stories like yours like that, it's like, wow, okay, it helps me appreciate, okay, I'm not alone, so now what do I do from here? How do I take that inspiration and apply it to my life? And that's very, and thank you for trusting me with that, for saying that, because I'm pretty sure that wasn't easy for you to talk about that.
No, it's yeah. I mean, when I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, obviously it's an autoimmune disease, slightly different to type 2, but it wasn't easy. At first, I was like, okay, whatever, I've got this. I've just got to deal with it. And then you go through the like stages of, oh, why me? Anger, like frustration, and then I sort of went through the stage of, because I have to inject every day, and I'm a very sporty person. I've always played sport all my life. And I got to the point where like, oh, what if I'm not as good at sport anymore? Yeah, you can you can go through a mad sort of rabbit hole of doubting yourself and feeling, let's be fair, feeling sorry for yourself. But you've got to just some way somehow crawl out of that rabbit hole and find the other side. I'm not saying like I'm bang on doing exercise all the time. I fall off now and then. Of course I do. Unfortunately, I still have a drink now and then, but I don't drink excessively anymore. I'll just drink to try and enjoy it. But that's something I'm still dealing with. I mean, as you know, life's life's a daily challenge. It's not like you once you figure out something, like that's it, boom, we're done. We've completed life. It's consistency. It's being self disciplined. Yeah, it's just finding those ways in your darkest moments to bounce back, basically.
Amen. Amen, brother. No, amen to that. And I definitely agree with that. Especially the balance. I think about the weight scale, like when one thing will outweigh the others, we have to do something to unweight those things so that way it can balances out in the I mean, is it always gonna be balanced? No, but it's all about maintaining the balance and how do we
Yeah, exactly.
handle the balance around us. And I love that you touched on that. So with that being said, I wanted to ask you about another song on that album called Johnny and Bobby. Talk to me about that song.
Okay, so Johnny and Bobby is a storytelling song which I created. So racism is a massive, ongoing problem, as we both know, not just in the UK, not just in America, but worldwide. Um, and with my music, with my poetry, I don't just talk about mental health. I talk about things and topics that I'm very passionate about. And one of them is racism and trying to educate people, uh, because there's people out there who are not racist, but they'll still have racist stereotypes within their head. Um, racism such there's so many branches from racism, because ever since the Atlantic slave trade, and maybe even further than that, but obviously the Atlantic slave trade was the big one. And basically I wanted to create a song which tries to, in a storytelling fashion, which tries to put two people, so Johnny and Bobby. So Johnny is starts off as a white kid, and then it follows his life. Same with Bobby. Bobby's black and follows his life, and Bobby moves in pretty much across the road from Johnny from a young age. But the song starts with Johnny's dad, and Johnny's dad's struggling for work. You know, he's a hardworking white man, trying to make ends meet, basically, and trying to put the bread on the table. So element of sympathy we feel for Johnny's dad, until he sees that Bobby is coming over and playing football or a ball game, I should say, because I say ball games, with Bobby. And then he then starts to slowly tell Johnny basically what he's been taught from his dad and his granddad about black people. And then Johnny, obviously being friends with Bobby, then ends up having a completely different viewpoint of Johnny, but also he doesn't want to go against his dad, but then he still wants to be friends with Bobby. So Johnny is a little bit confused, but eventually does stick with what his dad says, and then Bobby eventually has to move because they get into an altercation, and then it goes through. Then so it starts in 1994, then it goes to 2004, then it goes to 2014 when Barack Obama was the president. This is actually based in America as well. This song, and then we hit 2016 when pretty much things start changing, and Johnny becomes, I've used Trump as an example for it. He becomes an extreme Trump supporter, should we say, but has his own sort of morals due to what he's been passed down from his dad. So he's carrying that racism with him. And then we come to 2018, and then we hit 2020 when everything went on with the pandemic and Black Lives Matter movement. Johnny is being more aggressive, trying to get people to protest against Black Lives Matter, while Bobby is working in security for, well, we don't know who for until we get to 2021, which is where the conclusion of the song happens. And pretty much Johnny is working in the Capitol building as security, Bobby is working in the Capitol building as security, and Johnny storms it as it did happen in real life with his following, and then they meet at the end for some words, should we say, and a bit of a realization to Johnny, but I won't tell you what the ending is. I'll let people try and listen to the song and find that out for themselves. But basically, the point of the song is showing that racism is educated, not you're not born with it. That's the basics of the song.
I hear you on that. That's very powerful, actually, because when I'm listening to everything you're saying, and one thing I realized too, racism is educated, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel like, not that you're born with it, but I feel like it's more like it gets passed down to you from somebody else in a different generation. And think about one thing I thought about was a generational curse, because generational curses get passed on and passed on. So yeah, I'll pass you some knowledge, but unfortunately there's some consequences with the knowledge I pass you, because depending on how you get the knowledge, how you receive it, it either becomes a generational curse, or it's a generational curse that was passed on to you. And some things, it's like a virus. Like, I mean, I hate to say it like this, but it's like a virus, right? So it's a seed that gets planted in, right? And the bigger it gets, the crazier it becomes. Kind of like a tree, like a plant. You put a plant, like if I take a little seed, I can take it out with my hand and just remove it. But if you let the seed grow and grow and grow, you need something bigger than your hands to knock the plant down or the tree down. And knocking down a gigantic tree is probably going to take months, years, or sometimes a long time before you can knock that tree down. But if you don't pull that tree all the way down to its roots, then it's going to continue growing no matter how many times you cut it. It's like
100%.
David and Goliath. Like David and Goliath, let's say, I'll say that, you know, he didn't just knock the giant out, he chopped his head off type thing. So I feel like it works the same way. If you don't cut the head off and get to the root of where it migrates in you and really pull that thing out, it's going to continue, you know, overcoming you. And one thing I realized is, like I said, you could cut the tree down, but, you know, evolution is an ongoing process. So even if I cut that tree down, doesn't mean I pulled everything by its roots. And they grow differently each time you cut the tree down.
Definitely. I like that analogy. It's a good analogy, for sure.
No, thank you. And that's how that piece spoke to me. It's just unfortunate that this is, even till this very day, like we're still going through this. You know, this has been going on since like the 1500s, and it's just like, wow, you know, like we're still going through this, and I don't know if it's worse now or is not as bad. Like I can't say that, but what I do is just the fact that it's still going on. And there was a poet on Instagram who made a post about autism, basically, because her daughter has autism. And one thing that she was basically saying that, hey, you know, I can't believe we're still making fun of each other. We're still blasting each other about this. And basically she went to a park and the kids were picking on her because she's different. And that's what it comes down to. When you're different than what society says you are, it's like you're not accepted, right? And I thought, considering that life, you know, civilization has changed so much, you would think maybe some things would decrease, but actually it's increasing, and it sucks. That is what we have to go through even to this very day. Yeah, there's some things we have to filter out now because, let's be honest, you can't just say anything. So maybe in that sense, maybe it's not as bad, but it's still bad because as old things come to pass, I guess new things come to wow, I can't even pronounce that word. Fruitation. Is that, am I saying that word right? Like it becomes different, you know?
Fruition? Did you mean?
I think that's what I meant. Yeah, I think that's what I meant to say.
That makes sense. 100%. I think the I like to use like a bully in a playground. I think a lot of people unfortunately are sheep, aren't they? And they'll follow maybe the person who's got the most power, for example. So you have the bully in the playground who will pick on a weaker kid that they think's weaker. A kid that they think is weaker, and then nobody or hardly anybody ever stands up to that bully and stops them. They join them before they'd stop them, because the majority of people would, because they're afraid of them being bullied. And I feel like when it comes to racism, I feel like, you know, the slave trade was the Atlantic slave trade, which is pretty much where, you know, the modern day, well, slavery as we sort of know it stemmed from. I think the root, I always used to think the root was power and money. I used to think people were driven by power and money. And then I thought a bit deeper, and I thought, well, no, actually, to get power and money, there has to be something else going on, which made me realize that I believe the root of racism and the root to a lot of problems in the world is selfishness. So what I mean by that is people would take people from Africa and sell them because they were being selfish, because they knew that was going to make them the most money at the time, and they didn't really care for anybody's lives. Now, this is selfishness on a completely different level, because empathy, there's not really much empathy there. You know, and then the black man, the black woman was then seen to be, unfortunately, derogative, or like, black people were seen to be basically as not nice people. And then in America and around the world, every time a slave was bought, that other person who'd bought the slave again was doing that because of selfishness, because they knew that slave was then going to help them make even more money. So the best thing they could do is paint the picture of the black person to be completely bad and wild, So then other people around them who don't have this intense, like evil selfishness within them could then say, oh, actually, I understand why they're doing that. That makes sense, because this person is not actually a nice person. These people are going to steal from us, so it's okay to enslave them. And then I just think, as you said, I completely agreed with you with the generation thing. It's then passed from generation to generation to generation, all of these ideologies. And usually when you've got a parent, as much as people are quite defiant, but people will listen to or live by the morals of that parent. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of parents or generations stuck in this crazy cycle of teaching that the black person is a bad person, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, definitely. And one thing I found very not sad, but just I guess it's a shame that it gets like that, because one thing I've learned in my life, not everything our parents says is correct. Kind of like not everything the doctor says is correct. Not everything that a person says is correct. It's like me and my wife have things that, oh, says who? That's like our thing, because it's like,
Yeah.
so society says A, B, and C, but doesn't mean everything that A, B, C is correct. Like, and it's crazy because there's always three sides to a story. There's yours, there's mine, and there's the truth.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like that.
So it's interesting to me how this is what it's become. There was a poet that I was introduced to last year by because there's an organization, not an organization, there's like a group of people, they call them On the Offbeat, I think it's called. And it was through their channel I came across this man named Tony Trigilio. So he's a professor in Chicago, which he was actually a guest on the first season of my podcast. And they were talking about the Beats generation, right? So there was a poet by the name of Allen Ginsberg. So I'll just take it from there. He wrote about those same exact issues, because back in the 50s, right, going into the 60s, because the 60s, the hippie era was a lot different and they were more countercultural, and so was Allen Ginsberg. But Allen Ginsberg's whole thing was, this is what's going on. I'm going to join you guys because I want to understand what's going on. I want to see why this is going on. What do you guys stand for, type thing. And a lot of the pieces he wrote about, was basically like, hey, if we don't stop thinking this way, then this is going to happen. That's what his pieces were about. Yeah. If we don't talk about these issues are going to get worse. And this is because as a matter of fact, the Beat generation was the bridge to the hippies generation. And this is where it just took off from there. Because if you see a lot of the things that happened back in those days and what they were fighting for is a lot of the stuff that's going on even now. Like if Allen Ginsberg was still alive, he would have been writing about, I know for a fact, he would have joined the Black Lives Matter march, and he would actually write about everything he experienced in that time. But not just from his perspective, but from the perspective of other people around him, because he would ask questions, have conversations, and he would write them down. And it's funny because one thing I said to Tony Trigilio was, do you think this was a prediction of things to come if certain things did not come? Because what they were teaching in schools back then was, this is like post-World War II and all that stuff. But hey, okay, we could teach these things, but what about the stuff that's around us now? Like, how come we're not talking about this? Why we're not talking about that? Why are we kind of like shutting the door on those things? Because everybody talks about the Louisiana Purchase and all this other stuff, but what about the civilization that's going right now? Like, how come we're not teaching these things? And he was one of those pioneers that were countercultural against the post-war era kind of thing. Because, they're set in their old ways. His thing was, no, there's a different perspective of things. And I feel like, now that we're having this conversation, and I've had this conversation with other people as well, I can honestly say, safe to say, this was a prediction, more like, it was a prediction of, hey, if we don't stop doing this, then this is going to happen. But it was also like, see, like, I feel like if he was alive today, he'd be like, damn, I was afraid this was going to happen. And look what's happened, And it's just so interesting how even at an earlier time, they were seeing things from a perspective that a lot of people ignored. And I think I took it as, hey, let's stop being this way, but nobody listened to us, and look what happened, kind of thing. That's the way I took Allen Ginsberg's writing, and other poets from that generation as well. And one poet that is not very well recognized because she had completed suicide at a very young age was Elise
Oh,
Cowan, and all she wanted to do was be herself. But she was surrounded by Jewish family, and their culture was so strict that you can't talk about mental health, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that. But it wasn't until later that her best friend, Leo Skirt, I had her poems. So I said, I'm going to publish these poems. So thank you, Leo Skirt, for publishing those poems, because if you read her pieces, it's like, oh my God, this is exactly how I feel. This is exactly what you've been through. Just wanting to be ourselves. And it's just sad that we're still going through a lot of these things today. And it makes me wonder sometimes, like, is this what they saw ahead of time, kind of thing? I don't know. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's just like, wow, it's so crazy. And now a lot of people in civilization has ignored so many things, and look what it's become today. I'm not saying that it's everyone's fault, but I can say that, hey, this is a lot of things that they talked about that a lot of people ignored for so
yeah.
many years. And it's like, now we're talking about it. Now we're addressing those issues. But why weren't we addressing those issues before?
Yeah, no, wow, that's powerful, man. Very sad to hear that woman committed suicide as well. It's very sad. But I think that there was always another agenda, maybe, which is why they almost like didn't want us to start talking about these things. Again, I always come back to selfishness. Somewhere, so someone was gaining something from something, if you get me, which is why we didn't start talking about these things. However, I feel like now, finally, everybody is waking up. And we're not just waking up, we are fighting, we're standing up against racism, against mental health, against all of these things that have been problems for years. We are finally coming together and doing something about it. And it is powerful. And I don't think anybody can stop any of these movements anymore, because there's so many people passionate about it and talking about it, that power is in numbers at the end of the day, and there's more numbers getting on board with all these things. So I think we're heading in the right direction. And I really want to quickly mention about modern day slavery, which is what I touch on a little bit in my EP as well, on the first track, 13.
Okay.
Yeah, so I basically do a spoken word poem at the end of 13, and I watched a Netflix show called 13th. It's about the 13th Amendment, and basically, it's almost as though they've traded all these, they've traded basically brutality in the form of lynching and all the rights that black people didn't have. They've traded that for now incarceration, and incarceration is becoming a massive business. And it seems like, just from watching that documentary and doing a bit of research, that is almost the new form of slavery, get people incarcerated for years for just doing, petty crimes and stuff like that. It's a very deep rabbit hole, and we probably don't have enough time to explore it. But I wanted to quickly mention.
We could explore it. No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, because this I really think that, again, worldwide, there's a gain for somebody somewhere, and all these corporations are making money of things. And if they make incarceration a business, they're going to throw more people away for petty things. But who are they going to who would they throw and put in prison more? Would they put the white man in prison more? Would they put the black man in prison more, or other ethnicities? And history tells us that they would do it to the more, the BAME, the people with ethnic backgrounds, because they feel like it's acceptable, should we say? And that almost, to me, is pretty much a modern day slavery, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. Wow, that really hit home, because it's so true. I mean, I can't say I've been discriminated against in that way. I've had cops stop me for something real stupid, and it just happened to be like the opposite race of me. But like, I don't know, I can't say I've been discriminated in that way like the other minorities have. And it's just crazy to me how like this is even a thing to this very day. I was gonna ask you, do you want to actually read the piece?
Yeah, I can read that final poem if you like. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I had this sort of idea the other day, almost another analogy. Now, if you picture um, a white child and a black child, and maybe sort of an Asian child. This is going to sound horrible, by the way, but this is the point. The reason why I'm saying this for shock value is to try and get people to think. You see on the TV a lot, well, we do in Britain, a lot about the lack of food in Africa and children starving and stuff. And it almost becomes the norm, which is horrible to think. But if you trade that black child for a white child, I can guarantee you many people will perceive that completely differently and will be horrified by it, by the sight of seeing a white child who is very skinny, malnutrition, not getting the vitamins, minerals, food, water, whatever you say, homeless and things like that. I can guarantee you it is perceived differently. And a lot of people would probably say, "Oh no, I don't see any different because humans are human." But they will naturally, probably feel more, even have more empathy for the white child because they haven't seen it as much. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
so what?
it's so true.
You go.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say is like all these things are planted in our mindset, and we don't even know it. Even down to the fact, like I just said about them people constantly showing how bad Africa is, which is terrible, by the way. Like Africa being the motherland where I believe humans came from. How can that be one of the most the continent that is starving? It just baffles my mind. It's just shocking. But seeing these constant images and stuff, like people get used to them, and people almost expect them. That's what I'm trying to say. And it all
No, it makes sense.
links into what's going on. I'm sorry, man. I'm terrible at explaining myself, which is why I write poetry.
No, it's all good. No, it's all good. No, I get everything you're saying. Absolutely. And it's interesting because I wonder that same way, right? And I've always had this conversation with my wife or my brother or, just other people I know in my life. We, whether Americans or UK, or, whatever we're from, anything that's not Africa, basically poorish like that, like especially in America, I think this is a bigger, I don't know if I don't know if what I'm about to say, it applies to every country, but I know in America, particularly because that's where I'm from, one of the biggest issues I've always had with this country is the fact that we do a lot more complaining instead of just trying to understand what's around us, right? Because if you really think about and everything you just said, we really have nothing to complain about. Now, is there a lot of stuff that needs to be worked on behavior wise? Yeah, absolutely. But to make it seem like we have it worse than a lot of people, no, we don't, because you just made a good point right there. People in Africa, they have it a whole lot worse than we do, but yet they make the best of everything they have, no matter how bad the situation is. I think they're one of the most humblest people I've ever known. I have a friend of mine that came from there, but he's doing better here in the United States now. But it's just the fact that, like I can honestly say, are a little bit more humble than we are, because they take what they have and they make the best of things. Do they have food all the time? Do they have clothes all the time? No, they don't, but they make the best of everything. And yet we have it 20 times better than they do, but yet we're complaining because we don't have enough money, or we don't have this, or certain materialistic things that don't really last forever, because when we die, the flesh stays here. Spiritually, we go to heaven or to hell, or we all, some people don't believe in that. That's fine. And it's just like what we have here is only temporary. That's it, and what we have forever is our happiness, our joy, and our peace of mind. That's a lifestyle. That's a long lasting thing, and it just baffles me how we could look at what we have and complain when we could see someone like Africa, like, wow, they could teach us about what humility
Yeah.
is. They could teach us about what it is to really love what we have and really enjoy the best of what we have. And I'm not saying, okay, we have, some people, I'm not saying that everybody's like that. I'm just saying it just looks like the majority of this country is this way. Not everyone, you know what I'm saying? But it's just that, because I know there's people who have the worst of the worst in America, and it's like they're making the best of what we have, of what they have. But what I'm trying to say is, why is it so easier to complain and not easy to embrace? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I've actually been to Africa. I went to Zambia, and one of the things that I took away from it was how beautiful the nation was. Just like every person I was walking down the street, and they were saying, "Hi, how are you doing?" With a massive smile on their face. Where in Britain, don't get me wrong, some people, yes, greet you, but a lot of people are just moody, man. They don't. We don't walk down the street and smile and wave and, hey, how's it going? Yeah, everybody seems to be so focused in their own lives, and the friendliness and stuff is not as what it used to be, I guess. I sort of use the phrase that everybody's lost in their own little world, and they are. But when I was in Zambia, it was just so refreshing. Just everybody, and it wasn't just because I was a foreigner either, because they would do it to everybody, anybody and everybody. It was just a real sense of community wherever you went, and a real sense of togetherness, and that's what I really loved about Zambia. It was just a fantastic experience, and I would actually recommend, if anybody gets the opportunity to go to Zambia or Africa, please do, because it's such an eye-opening experience, and you will take. And I mean, for me, it was life-changing. So as cliche as it sounds, it was life-changing. And I feel everybody needs that, man. Everybody needs that life-changing experience in their lives.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, because life changing experience, I definitely want to talk about what we've been going through this whole last year and a half with the virus. Because I tried to say the word only because I think I could get in trouble for that. It's kind of weird with recording and all these rules you have to follow. So
Yeah.
it's like whatever. So with the virus, everything's been going through. Like, I feel like for me that was definitely a life-changing experience for me, and I'll tell you why. Because where I live, because I'm originally from New York, I'm from Brooklyn, so I was used to certain things, and then when I moved to New Jersey, I'm used to something else. And when certain things are taken away from you, you learn. I feel like this virus, this pandemic that happened, definitely changed my perspective of things, because I started to see my own true colors, and there was things that I believe, like, what, God wanted me to work on that. So with that being said, I wanted to ask you, how did this experience change the way you think, if that makes sense?
The experience, as in with the virus. Yeah. So
yes.
The experience with the virus. You're gonna find this maybe quite. I don't know. I can't think of the word. I'm such a deep thinker, and I've expressed a lot of my deep thoughts, from a young age. Put it this way: at 16, I wrote this. Everybody's lost in their own little world. They feel the universe revolves around them as it twirls, but they've been hurled into a mind-controlled state, influenced by the media. They've taken the bait, manipulated by a force that is seen to be great. Murderous cowards, a power that will soon have its fate. The secrets of the universe, the secrets of the planets. I seek, I find, and I damn sure demand it. If we keep turning a blind eye, then we will all vanish. From nothing but a conspiracy, this is soon to be carnage. The government, they're nothing but thieves. They steal from you. They hide things from us, never show us the truth. Like Tupac, I still see no changes for the better, but change will come soon, depending on whether that change is for the good or for the bad. Together, we gotta protect one another, open our eyes, find release from our hypnotized minds. As society is living in the broken dream, the only hope is our spoken schemes, but all I hear is silence as they choke our screams, oblivious violence as we continue to live in modern day slavery. So basically, that was my way. I said a minute ago, I'm not very good at explaining myself. I'm better at writing poetry and raps. But I wrote that 16,
That's
17,
fine.
which is basically saying, we all need to wake up and stop conforming to all these rules of society, like the 9-to-5 job, the societal that this world has. And when COVID happened, it sort of, oh, sorry, I wasn't meant to say that, was I? When the virus happened,
It's fine. Yeah, it's
I feel
fine.
like a lot of people, including myself, I mean, it did affect me to a point, because I thought, right now I can work on my poetry and my raps, and I can really make an impact. But also I feel like it gave everybody what I've always been thinking anyway. It gave everybody the freedom to look and reflect on their lives and see whether they're happy in the job that they're in, or whether their life is fulfilled, or whether they want to go out and chase their dreams. They want to take 6 months to explore Alaska, or like
Right.
it gives people the realization to really look at their lives and think, wow, what am I actually doing? What am I doing with my life? I've been in this job for 10 years now. Okay, it pays my bills, but am I fulfilled? I'm just, I travel, I get in my car, I travel to work, I have lunch, I come home, and then I do that 5 days a week, and then I have a weekend, I might have a drink with some friends, and then it's back to the grind again. And then let's say they have one holiday a year. Okay, I'm not saying that's a bad life. It's really not. There's far more people worse off. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying here is, we as human beings, in my opinion, have a purpose on earth. We are also travelers. Everybody should be able to explore this earth without, like, the thing we're all held back by is money. Let's be honest, because we need money to do stuff. But I'm hoping that this is given the opportunity for people to maybe be able to be a bit frugal with their money, and maybe think, this materialistic item here, which costs this much a month, that I don't really need, and maybe I can take one day more off work a week, so I have 3 days weekend, so then I can go out and explore the world on the weekend, or I can put more time into my passion. I can write that book that I wanted to write. I can create those poems that I wanted to create. I can start that art class that I wanted to do. I can learn how to plaster walls. Whatever. That's the biggest thing for me, that people look at their lives and reflect and think, no, this is not right. Let's change this, and let's be happier, and let's just try and achieve more and see more things in the world. Again, if that makes sense.
Amen. No, amen, brother. No, amen, brother. And honestly, that's the way it should be. Unfortunately, it's not always the case, but that's the way it should be, in my opinion. I definitely agree with you on that. And it's true, because I thought about it as, okay, yeah, like you never want to look back in life later and be like, damn, should I have done this? I could have done this. What if I would have done this? Would have, could have, should have, but didn't, or I did, or I didn't. And it's like, it sucks to be in a situation like that. Many times, I guess you could say regrets. I used to say, oh, I don't have regrets because then I wouldn't be the person I am. But when I look at it realistically, yeah, I do have regrets, because, yeah, it made me the person I am today. But to not have regrets and wonder, I'd be lying to myself, right? At the same time, now, how do we take those regrets and to make it better? And I think you just basically summed it up right there. Everything you just said makes so much sense, because okay, I have these regrets, but it doesn't mean I have to make more regrets. Take the regrets I have already and turn it into something where I don't have any other regrets.
Yeah, that's
if
powerful.
That makes sense.
And what's even more powerful is you, as a man, recognizing that you did have some regrets, because a lot of people will live their life. They may have these regrets, but they're in denial of those regrets, because they don't want to sort of fathom or think of, oh, what if I did do that? They can't even escape that horrible thought of thinking, oh, my life could have been like this or that. So if somebody who can recognize they have regrets and then move forward in life to try and accomplish life with as little My mum always says this. She always says, Duke, I want you to go through life with as little ifs as possible. So if a person can then go through life with as little ifs as possible, then that is powerful. So well done to you, man, for, you know, for recognizing that you've got regrets, and it's obviously been life-changing for you. And you know, it sounds like you're really achieving and really striving to be better in life, and go for your dreams and stuff. So yeah, awesome, man. Awesome to hear.
Wow. I love that. I'm so good at, you know what I'm gonna do after this? Once, like I put the episode out, I'm so gonna write a quote. I'll say, by Duke L, obviously I'll say, and I'll put that, live life with as little ifs as possible. I love that. I never saw that until now. Like, wow, that is the best way
Yeah.
to look at life, with a little ifs as possible. It's so crazy because I saw a preaching that, it sounded funny, but I know what he was trying to say. He said, we can't go on life if you're always looking at your butt, right? And he's not talking, at first you're like, oh, that's funny, but no, he was talking about not butt as in your butts are,
yeah.
but buttocks. He mean butt as in like, oh, like everything is but. I want to do this, but. And it's like, if you want to go into your purpose, you want to step into your future, you can't live in life with your butt, but I'm not qualified. I don't know the right people, but I don't know this. Oh, but I don't know that. You can't live life if you're constantly being followed but your butt. You know what I'm saying? And that's what it reminded me of when you said that. Live life with a little ifs as possible. I love that. That is the way it should be. Do we always follow it? No, but I love that because, wow, I've never even would have thought of something like that. You say your mom told you
my mum's a
this?
very wise woman. She told me that at a young age.
Oh my God, that is
she's
so
awesome.
powerful. Tell her I said that's
Yeah, I'll let her know,
powerful.
man.
So of course, we're gonna bring this to a close. I just want to say thank you so much for doing this episode with me and being a part of this journey with me, and however we can continue supporting each other, definitely. And with that being said, do you have any final thoughts that you want to bring in?
First of all, I didn't get to read that 13 piece, but that's absolutely cool, because what I want to say is, everybody who listened in, number one, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you've been inspired or maybe learned something from me. And maybe you can have the strength to be more open about your mental health or something that's going on in your life which you want to sort of tackle. And please, I would really appreciate if you checked out my new EP. It's out on all streaming platforms. It's called 13th of the 3rd, 1994. It's my date of birth, and yeah, I'm just really proud of it. And each song is meaningful. I'm all about meaningful music. 7 tracks. Yeah, please check it out. And I want to leave with this. Basically, I want to say that in life we all have opportunities, and a lot of us procrastinate, and maybe we say no to some opportunities because we're scared, or because we're not quite sure how they're going to happen. I'm going to give you one example now, and that is this podcast. If I didn't say yes to Robert doing that live show, then I wouldn't have met Andy, and then I wouldn't have done this podcast. And also, if I said no to the podcast, I wouldn't have had this amazing conversation with Andy. So what I'm saying is, once you allow yourself to be uncomfortable, because sometimes when you go in these conversations, they can be uncomfortable because you're nervous. Being nervous sometimes can be uncomfortable. However, on the other side of that is, opportunity, more opportunities, and beauty, man. And the conversation we've had today, I'm so thankful to be a part of this, Andy. And yeah, everybody just go for your dreams, and big love.
Amen. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you so much for that.